Welcome on in. Okay, what are we doing today? We are looking at the spoken interaction workshop. This is part 2. Last week we had one session and many of you have turned up again. Welcome. And so today we are looking at spoken interaction. Okay, so how to ace the O-level English oral exam part 2. 2 hours. Myself and Mrs. Shum, we will try to our very best to share with you all the tips that we have gathered over the years. But there's a role which you need to play. You need to participate, and I think that last week we tried to give you some opportunities to participate. I think many of you did. You typed your answers in, right? But that's the planned response. So planned response, okay, so if you talk about some things and then I'm looking at your structure or that's fine if you type into the chat. But perhaps for tonight, since it's spoken interaction, if we give you a chance to speak, be brave and just speak. Okay, so nobody will see your face. What else should I tell you? Or nobody will see your face. They'll just hear your voice. And whatever name you typed in, like Austin, nobody knows what your surname is, so you're semi-anonymous anyway. Maybe I leave it up to you. Okay, what are we doing today? We are covering these issues and topics. So understanding what the exam format looks like. We'll have a live demonstration of how to deal with the spoken interaction question and what your biggest challenges are. Give you 5 techniques as a practice, things like that. Okay, so as usual, we'll start off with your biggest challenges. What are your biggest challenges? What are the main problems that you face when it comes to the spoken interaction? Okay, can you type into the chat? What problems do you face? So let me know, what are your biggest challenges when it comes to spoken interaction? Can you type into the chat? Okay, Joshua says he can't think on the spot, feel nervous. Yang says saying and okay. Leonard says not knowing what to say on the spot. Gabby says not knowing what to say. Louis says stuttering. Sandia says stuttering. Kishaf says need to overcome being nervous and speaking confidently. Ashit says not knowing what to say. Yukai says realizing that the idea can't be expanded any further. Leonard says using filler words.
Are
Sanjay
these
says
not
lack
the
of content.
same problems as essay writing? They look quite familiar, isn't it? All of you.
Almost the some of it is the
Yeah.
same.
But the
Some of it is different.
stuttering is
Yeah.
the same as not knowing when to start writing. Or writing, starting and stopping. That's like stuttering when you write. The break and the flow.
Okay,
How to
so
properly add on to points, how to elaborate. All these are common problems indeed.
okay, not being able to convey your idea, difficulty of churning out content on the spot, as well as enunciating the words that I wish to present clearly. Okay, getting asked an unexpected question and not knowing how to answer. Very good. I'll deal with this. How to properly add on to the point I've already. Very good. I will deal with all of these things. So far, I haven't come across any question which is unexpected other than the one which says where to get the materials. That one my colleague will help you. Okay, my colleague will, Roy will message you directly, talk about the material. Okay, getting asked an unexpected question, not knowing how to answer, very common issue. How to properly add on to the point I've already said, and how to do it. Okay, very good. Yeah, all of this All of these are very typical issues, the biggest challenges, very real challenges, not not fake challenges. And what has happened is that over the years, as I have observed the students taking the exam, I noticed some things. Okay, I noticed something. Some students demonstrated certain techniques. When I went back and then I thought about it later on, why did I give this student the top band? And I realized, well, okay, she spoke very fluently and confidently, but if I drill down to it, what did she actually do? And then I discovered a few things, which is why those particular techniques can be transmitted. Because if I just say, oh, just speak more fluently or don't use fillers, very difficult to do, very difficult to implement, right? Since it's too general. So what I've discovered is that there are some specific things that you can do, that can be done, some specific things that can be applied and can be done. And then these are just techniques. It's not a it's not as if it's some secret thing, and it's not as if you're born with the techniques, rather that you practice the techniques and then you get familiar with it and then you can use it. Okay. Nimisha, do you want to ask a question? Yeah, you can type into the chat, okay? Okay, so these are the biggest challenges. So what I would like to do is I'd like to we do a quick overview first. Okay, so overview when it comes to the spoken interaction. Can you see my screen? Okay, so sorry that I just had to say that. Okay, so I assume that you can all see my screen. So since nobody is okay, so the marks. Okay, so spoken interaction marks. So your marks break down. Okay, so the most important thing, again, I have students who say, why is there no audio? You will not be asked questions about what people say in the video. So don't panic and say there's no audio, because there's no point having audio. All you hear is background noise. If it's a video of a noisy hawker center. So no dialogue, no audio. Okay. So we are looking at spoken interaction. So spoken interaction is thematically linked to the video. It's not as if you have planned response and the video as one thing, and then the spoken interaction, they're going to ask you questions about aliens on the moon. They don't do that. It's thematically linked. Do you understand? So, so that's to address your question. So it's thematically linked. So this is how the marks are awarded, and that's one of the things which you need to be familiar with, because many of you say that you've never seen this before, the marking rubrics. So what's the difference between band 4 and band 5? Again, well, what happens is there's this section here which you don't see here. So for example, if I give you a question, if I prompt you, and then if you answer, and you answer very well, you really answer very well, you still can't get 13 to 15 marks. But I answered the question. Yes, you did. And you broke it down into all the different sections. You gave examples. You elaborated. You made a recommendation. You summarized. You answered everything. And you still can't get 13 to 15. Do you know why? Because you didn't do this. You didn't move beyond the prompt. And this is the thing which you need to do, meaning that it's different from a comprehension. Again, we're back to this idea, comprehension versus oral. In the comprehension question, you cannot bring in extra information. You must stick only to whatever they have asked of you. You must stick to the given text which they printed out for you. You cannot bring in your general knowledge. Correct? Now, what happens for this? What happens for the oral? For the oral, in order to get your top band, you actually need to, okay, go beyond. You need to, but not all the time. If you go beyond the prompt all the time, it means that you're out of point. Make sense? So sometimes you go beyond the point prompt. So the question asks this, and then after you have elaborated, after you have explained, after you have given examples, then you say, but that reminds me of some other thing, and then you just bring it in just as a correlation, as a parallel idea. You say it reminds me of something. It's a similar situation. It's a totally different topic, but it's a similar situation. Why? Why do they reward marks for students who do this? Well, if you think about it, that's what happens in the real world. I know that you are attending this webinar in order to learn how to get higher marks. Okay, but the reason why this is in the exam, why this is part of your curriculum meaning all the things that you have to learn, all the things that you have to study, all the skills that you need to develop. And it's because when you leave school and you get to university and or polytechnic and you go out into the working world and carry out a conversation with somebody, you don't just answer like a robot. So you're having lunch with your colleagues and your boss, and then your boss says, uh, do you think that this Malay food is reasonably priced? Then you say, oh yeah, it's reasonably priced because one, two, three reasons. And for example, the chicken is this and the vegetable is this. And the boss looks at you and says, don't you have an opinion of your own? Who are you? Why do you sound as if you are a robot? Do you understand? So you need to say, well, compared to or the other time when I was in Thailand, oh, compared to my mother's cooking. So you bring in something, but not too much. Because if you go out of point, then your boss thinks this person is unable to keep track of one single idea. So you keep track of that one single idea, then you bring in connected ideas because that's how you converse well. That's how you have a real life conversation with somebody. Okay, make sense? You understand? So this part is important. So this is one of the main reasons. One, there are few challenges, but this is one of the main reasons why your marks get stuck at 12. Okay, so if you have marks they have never, if you've never received any mark above 12 out of 15 for this, think about whether or not you're doing this, whether you're being too strict with yourself, whether you're being afraid, whether you allow yourself to just expand slightly, to explore certain ideas, just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. Okay. And then once you do that, the examiners think, yes, you have the spark of life in you. You are a real human being and you can carry out an interesting conversation. So remember, it's not about whether or not your answer is interesting or not. Rather, that because there's this component which you bring in where it's related but not actually answering the question, but it is related. And so sometimes you move just a little beyond the prompt, that makes it interesting. So they cannot give you marks for whether it's interesting or not, but they can give you marks and they can lock you down into band 4 if you answer the question strictly and do not proceed beyond that. Okay, do you know what you need to do now? So that is important. So most students, right, they will get something like 10 10 to 12 marks. Most of you will get something like 10 to 12 marks. It's very seldom that I award 7 to 9 marks. Not common at all. This mark here is not a common mark. Okay, because most of the time, this I only do this if I have students who answer and then they don't elaborate. They answer in one sentence or two sentences. So for example, if I ask Mrs. Shum, I say, Mrs. Shum, do you think that exercise is important for the elderly?
Yes, it is important for the elderly. Firstly, it is important because the elderly need to exercise. So exercising is important.
Yeah,
Secondly,
so so
yes,
when
that's
one
what happens.
so you
Some
know
of them loop.
yeah, so it becomes a loop, right? Why is it important for the elderly? It's because they are elderly. That's why it's important for them to exercise. And when you do this, I go, okay, so that means that I need to work hard as an examiner. I don't want to fail you. If
So what would you
if I just
prompt
leave it like
actually?
that, you're going to fail. So then I need to ask another question, and then I need
Okay.
to be very creative and try not to fail you by not giving you the answer, by my ask leading questions. You know, I might. So what I might do is I might say,
Mm,
so I understand what you're saying. So when the elderly exercise, how do they benefit? Okay, then they say, oh, they benefit by doing that. So it's as if the examiner unlocks the door for you.
yes. So
So if
actually the
yeah,
examiner is prompting them to unlock the first PEL, hoping after you do the first PEL, you can then quickly think of a second reason and unlock the second PEL. Because what happens is with band 2 and 3 actually, some students are thinking, it is okay, I cannot think. Let me warm up and let the examiners do the work. Please don't do that. A lot of students tell me, don't worry, by the last question, I'm answering well. Now, this is not progressive, you know. You are given an overall mark for your performance. So if you're going to start at like 20 kilometers per hour and only hurtle by the last question, it is too late to pull up the marks, because what you are giving the examiners the impression is that this person doesn't have enough initiative, possibly not enough English words. That's why the examiner needs to keep prompting in order to get the mental schemas and also the vocabulary working. So please don't leave it to the examiners to do work. If you want the mark, go ahead and do at least 2 to 3 PELs. So just now, Kaden, somebody asked, aren't these rubrics for plan response? And this is a valid point. If you notice the plan response and this spoken interaction, the rubrics hinge on the same thing: thorough, thoughtful responses, wide range of vocabulary and structures, going beyond the prompt. So what we taught you last week, having 2 points, having what you call suggestions and reflections, concluding, everything is reusable. So don't separate it so strictly to say, wait, this is plan response. That is interaction. Regardless, you need to go in detail. So whatever I answered just now, if it were a plan response, I would have failed really, really very badly. Okay.
yeah, exactly. So even if you can speak very well by the third question, as Mrs. Shum said, because you have warmed up, what happens is that it still falls under this category because it's engages. Yes, now you're very engaged, but it's after that, after some support and encouragement. Do you understand? Even if by the second question or the third question, you become very effusive and you elaborate and then you explain and you have a great spoken interaction with the tutor, it's too late. Don't wait. Don't wait for the examiner to prompt you. If the examiner prompts you, again, I must be careful what I say.
I
Do
want to
not
ask you
say that.
something, Stephen.
Yeah, yeah,
We have all been to all kinds of schools. I
yeah,
don't know whether you're like me. Actually, by the fourth or fifth sentence, most of my partners and I, we would have circled a number on the paper already.
yeah,
So unless a miracle happens, usually no.
yeah. So
Usually the mark stays. That means within 30 seconds of you talking, we have an idea of whether this is a full mark or this is a fail. Okay,
yeah,
so unfortunately, if you happen to be behind very effusive and very chatty candidates, the contrast will be too huge. So for example, some of you might be lining up behind three of the top students in your class. Okay, so they are able to talk non-stop. Okay, in fact, with one prompt, they somehow already predicted all prompts. You know, some students do that. They go well and beyond until it eats into the second and third prompt. The very good ones actually do that. And so what happens is you don't want to be that antithesis, and you don't want to be that contrast. And the examiner will go, oh no, this is one of those band 2 and 3, quite obvious, right? Just now we had the 4s and 5s, and now suddenly the volume of words is like halved. So examiners will instinctively put their pen around band 3, and you don't want that to happen. That's what we're telling you. So you really have to memorize. It's not whether you're shy, you don't feel like talking, or you're unfamiliar. The marks are for you to grab. So grab them, do your best. No excuses.
yeah. And we have techniques. There are actual techniques because some of you might say, but I don't normally talk. I don't normally carry out conversations in English. I carry out conversations in Singlish with my classmates during recess, and we talk a lot, but it's all garbage. It's all Singlish, right? But I don't actually carry out proper conversations in English, in which case you must begin. You understand? But having said that, tonight I'm going to teach you the techniques that you can start to practice on your own because the techniques that you will learn tonight need to be practiced. They need to be mastered by you. You need to grab hold of it and then you need to install it and then you need to use it until it becomes automatic and then you will improve. Okay, so one of the reasons why we don't speak much is because we're not confident. I mean, if you were to ask me to carry out a conversation in Mandarin, I would just say, I would just turn away and sidle sideways and go out of the door. I wouldn't be able to carry out the conversation in Mandarin because I didn't memorize the words. I know the techniques, but I don't have the sentence structures. So the good news is that I don't take exams anymore. But you have to. So I will help you by giving you the techniques and the sentence structures. Okay.
The
Okay.
main
So
thing to stop is to stop using Gen A and Gen Z slang. You know, we all know what slay or roast or being cooked means, but you cannot take these into the exam. So from
yeah.
now onwards, you really have no choice. You have to sound with your friends, try to talk more standard sentences like how Stephen and I are conversing now. At least you want to maintain a certain standard. No, don't go like, hey Stephen, what's up? Bruh, how's life been treating you? You know, that kind of thing. So you have to cut down, work on elaboration. If your parents ask you, son, what do you want to eat? Don't say don't know, anything, whatever. At least come up with a sentence like, I'm not with too much of an appetite, but I wouldn't mind a salad because I overate during lunch. Something like that.
Or just say I'm not sure. That beats don't know. You understand?
IDK.
Yeah. Now, if you listen to Mr. Sham and myself talking to you in real time, you realize that our speech is not perfect. It's not 100% perfect English. your response for this section of the exam does not need to be 100% perfect English. Why? Because the rubric says it just needs to be well considered, meaning that there are few different perspectives on it. It needs to be coherent, meaning the audience can understand what's being said. It needs to be well developed, so there are examples. I need to provide you with vocabulary, and as usual, the structures and the pronunciation needs to be clear. Nowhere does it say that you need to have perfect grammar. Do you understand? But it needs to be clear enough that people will understand what you are saying. Okay, so what's the difference between band 4 and band 5? So band 5 students do all those good things, and then sometimes they move beyond the prompt. So this is very important. Okay, so you offer some ideas that the examiner didn't ask about, but it's related. And so if you show independent thinking, then you are in band 5. You understand? So this is that one thing which you need to bear in mind. So this idea of confidence, it's not an emotion. Confidence, because you're a confident speaker and therefore you get high marks. No, it's actually the reverse. It's because I went beyond what the examiner asked of me. That's why the examiner thought that I was confident. And that's why the examiner gave me marks. Do you understand? I went beyond what the examiner asked of me slightly. And then the perception is that, wow, this person not only answered the question, but could draw a parallel, could talk about what might happen in 20 years' time, could make a parallel with, or could make a link with what happened in Malacca in the 1800s, whatever it is. And it's, wow, yes, that's fantastic. And then you get your band 5. So it's not about having to force yourself to feel confident. It's actually having the techniques and then using the techniques and then being perceived as being confident. Okay. How to go beyond the prompt? Okay, we will show you live demonstration. Okay, what do these techniques look like in action? Because I'm going to teach you 5 techniques. So so type into the chat, okay, any question at all, and then observe me as I answer. Okay, so type a question. Don't ask me something about schools, but ask me something which you think that Mr. Sim, this old guy, is, this teacher, he won't be able to answer, and then you want to
Also to
watch.
note, they're starting to type. Please don't ask things like, would you rather eat fried rice or fried noodle? It has to be general. Like, do
Yeah,
you prefer eating out
yeah,
or at home?
yeah.
Okay, it's not, they're not going to ask you, what do you think about, what do you think is the next virus that's going to hit mankind? It's not going to be like that. All of you have gone through generic topics before. Be fair to us, okay?
Okay.
Try.
Okay, so and then remember what this is what you're going to do, okay? As I answer, you are going to observe. So observe, okay? Observe. Observe. Some people ask me, what is this? This is an I. So observe. Observe how I begin my answer. Observe what I do when I need time to think. Because these are all the issues which you face. All the problems which you listed just now are the problems which I also experience. It's just that I will demonstrate certain techniques to overcome them. How do I end my answer? Okay, shall we begin? Okay, so I'm not going to answer, do I support LGBTQ? Why you ask such questions? Okay, so
Okay,
uh
I'll pick one and ask
yeah, yeah,
you. How
yeah.
about that?
Okay, that's
Okay.
fair.
Okay, Stephen, let's start spoken interaction. Do you prefer indoor activities or outdoor activities? Why?
From my own experience, indoor activities normally require quite a lot of out-of-pocket expenses, meaning I need to pay money. So whether it's going to time zone or visiting a cafe, I need to spend money. There's just no way out of it. On the other hand, if I go to a park and just walk around, or if I take a stroll along the beach, it's free. Or if I just go cycling, that's also free and healthy. So I think my experience isn't unusual. And I think this also reflects a bigger pattern that in Singapore, we haven't really come out with a system in which we encourage people to uh, take part in outdoor activities and yet provide them with some sense of comfort. One of the reasons why I prefer to take part in indoor activities, even though it costs money, is that most of the time it's in air conditioned comfort. And wouldn't you agree that Singapore's weather is just terrible? It's not that I don't want to run, it's just I can't stand the sweat. And then after that, the body odor and so the question really boils down to how individuals interact with the environment. And so if you break it down in terms of cost, in terms of comfort, in terms of benefits, that can seem very mechanical, but most human beings don't think like that. They just instantly respond. So all things considered, that's my view.
Well done. Okay, so I want to ask all of them this. What do you think the next prompt is? Because just now, Frederick, one of my students said, how do you predict prompts? Now, obviously, this topic is veering towards keeping people occupied meaningfully, active aging or active living. A broader question would be something like, so, Stephen, what do you think are the ways to keep Singaporeans active and healthy as they age? Okay, so I won't ask him to answer, but this is the likely track that we are going.
Yeah.
So, can you shift up to the rubrics? What do you think of teacher Stephen's answers?
Oh,
It's
shift
not
back
whether
to the
you
rubrics. Oh, they're,
agree.
they're going to give me marks again. Okay, thank you. Okay, tell
Yeah,
me
so
which band,
it's
which
not
band?
whether you agree or disagree, because some of them put so sad or whatever. It's not inference. Literally, you've heard it. How many marks
So
could
so
this get?
instinctively, right? So
Yeah,
instinctively, immediately you jump to, and that's what the examiners feel too, except that they're very busy writing down evidence. So instinctively, they give the mark first, then they write down evidence to support their marks. It's very strange. You would think that they record down all these things which they notice, then based on that, okay, then they give you the mark. But it's not true. All of you're doing it just the way that the examiners do it. You instinctively arrive at the band or the mark, and then after that, you think of reasons to justify.
yeah.
Human beings are
So
very
there
strange.
are no half marks, by the way. If I give a lower mark and the other examiner gives a higher mark, after the candidate leaves, we have to work it out. We have to work out whether it's a 14 or 15 or 13. Okay, so no 14 and a half. So Stephen, not bad. They give you 14 and a half or
Wow,
15.
thank you.
And
Thank
you
you.
notice he didn't rush through the answers. And the answer is quite refreshing. It didn't do the usual firstly, second. It looked at the motive of actually going indoor and tying in with the sweltering weather, which is totally valid. So those of you who are wondering, must I say yes to everything or obviously sound like I support outdoor sports because it's healthier to be sweating out under the sun. There's no preferred answer. It is how you do it. Okay. And teacher Stephen, I think what he's trying to get at is he used several schemas. In fact, out of desperation, he actually threw a rhetorical questions. Don't you agree? That is quite good, but not actually forcing me to answer, but it shows that he is thinking through the process. So there's a comparison between indoor and outdoor. He gave very precise examples of time zone versus going to a park. I think very clearly it was very well paced. Okay, no Singlish, no sloppy language. It cannot be anything lesser than 13 to 15 out of 15 in short. Yeah, so if he continues, presumably with such good quality answers, he is well on the way to getting full marks. And yes, you can get full marks. I have scored many full marks before at the O levels. And it's based on enthusiasm. You know, sometimes you just enjoy listening to the student sharing ideas. Not perfect, but you have such an enjoyable time, and you just want to reward the child for his or her effort. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
that.
Your biggest challenges, we did that earlier, right? Okay, so you might write that down here if you want to. So the 5 problems that we will solve today, the 5 problems we meet in heaven. Okay, so the 5 problems we will solve today. The first one is, and many students do this. Yes, I agree that exercise is important. This is because, okay, so don't do this, okay? Remember, we did this last week for the spoken interaction. Many students end up doing this again. Remember, this is a crutch. Don't do this, okay? But I know why students do this. Okay, later on, in a short while. I mean, I just give you an overview first. Okay, the second problem is, I don't know whether I agree or I disagree. So sometimes they say, do you prefer this or that? I don't know the answer. So immediately I say, oh, I prefer indoor exercise. This is because, but I haven't actually thought through the issue yet. And so halfway through, I realized I don't have enough things to expand on. I don't know what else to say. I'm stuck, right? That's what some of you typed into the chat just now. So I've gone, this particular avenue of exploration cannot be expanded any further because I don't know, but I locked myself into it at the very beginning. How do we solve this? Okay, how about problem number 3? I give a short answer, and then I stop. And then the examiner prompts you because you think that, okay, I have answered the question, but what you really need to do is problem and solution, compare and contrast. What else you have? Definitions, you can have illustrations, personal anecdotes. So all of these things we covered last week. Remember mental schemas? I can't remember the question by the time I finish because if you use a certain schema called P.E.E.R.S, S at the end is for summarize, right? But I can't summarize because I can't remember the question. So what do I do at the end? So I go, that's what if I pause? So sometimes I have students who speak faster and faster and faster. They think that if they pause, the examiner will deduct marks. So they get very worried. There's feeling of anxiety. Now I need to say, but I haven't thought what to say yet, but I need to say something. So they end up with like, like, um, uh, like, and of course we will tell you don't do that. Um, and we will show you how to deal with it. Okay. Okay. So the first technique. The first technique. Okay. So normally what happens in an essay? Normally what happens in an essay when you use your PEEL, right? But we say that for spoken, we use your P.E.E.R.S, right? So recommend and then summarize, correct? This method is not wrong. This is for your essay. And this we taught you back in primary school. It's not wrong for oral in primary school oral. And some of you might still use this. It's not wrong. But uh, let me see. Okay. Can I add a new page? So what happens is that your P.E.E.R.S, where you give your answer first, where you say yes, and then you elaborate, you give an example, you make a recommendation, and then you summarize. There's nothing wrong with this structure, but, and this is a very big but, you can only do this successfully if there's a match between the question and your content knowledge. So if you have the general knowledge and it matches the question, meaning that you have studied the model answer, you have prepared beforehand, then when this question comes out, you say, I know, because so this is the point, this is the example, this is the elaboration, this is the recommendation, this is some summary. Okay, so again, you're not doing something spontaneous. You're feeling very happy because you say, I studied for this, it came out. Okay, that's it. I'm going to score. There's nothing wrong with it. That's one of the reasons for us to go through this so that you at least it's going into your head and you're not just playing computer games somewhere, right? At least you put in effort, you know these things, and then you know how to structure your answer. So you deserve some marks for the hard work which you've put in. There's nothing wrong with this. Okay, so that is path A. Path number one, or path A. Path A is when there's a match. Path B is what happens when there is no match. You don't know, but the question pops up and you've never prepared for it before. Like that question which you just gave me, there was no way that I could have studied for it, right? I had no idea which question Mrs. Shum was going to ask. And so now, if I had immediately decided to say, yes, I prefer indoor exercise or indoor activities, and then halfway through I'm stuck because I don't know how to elaborate, then my marks will go down, which is very sad because I had the potential to demonstrate and to use all these different techniques. So there's a different way to approach this. Do you understand? So there are two paths that you can go by and you can choose which one you want to use depending on the situation. So you can start with your P at the beginning. You can. You can if you have the content knowledge. But if you're like me just now and internally you're panicking, but externally it's like, no problem, I have all the techniques I can answer. Then what do? I cannot start off with yes, because yes is like your math sum. If they ask you some very strange question like x over 2 bracket y times 33.4 g equals to yz squared factorial over 5, find the value of x. Then the very first line you say x equals 42. The very first line of your maths answer. That's impossible. And this is actually the equivalent, that in the very first line of your answer, you have already arrived at your conclusion, because these questions require me to think. And I have not thought about it before. Because as they say, this is a curved ball, right? It's not the straight ball, it's the curved ball. So I couldn't prepare for it. So on the spot, I need to react. So I need to give myself time to think about it. So what technique did I use to give myself time to think about it? What I did was that I gave myself the leeway to describe the example first. I describe that thing which pops into my mind. And as I'm describing that situation in my mind, there's another part of me which says, I can see, I can understand what's going on. And that's what we call reflection. This is what you do in your personal recount, right? Describe an incident in which you face an embarrassing situation. Full stop. What lessons did you learn from this? So you describe it and then you say, oh, through describing it, through imagining it, I can actually say number one, number two, number three. And this is my stand. This is my opinion. This is what I believe. So you describe my grandmother walks every morning at the park, and then you expand. She started doing this after she retired. And then the point is, and that's why I believe regular exercise is important, especially for the elderly. It's the reverse. It's the reverse. So many of you are saying, but we say, don't worry. Because when I was delivering my answer just now, and so he said, but Mr. Sim, you didn't follow yeah, because I was doing path B. Path B, path A is easy. Path A is easy. It means that you mugged, and then the question fits, and so you can come up with the solution. X equals 42. I've done this maths question before. All the values are exactly the same. Okay, so I know the answer, and this is what I do. But what if the question comes out which you have never thought about? So you need to think on the spot, and that's what I'm teaching you tonight. That's what we are showing with you. How to fish, how to think for yourself, how to carry out a conversation about topics which you've never spoken with anybody about, right? So you describe the example first, and then you arrive at the point. You must say very clearly, because if you don't, because if you don't say it very clearly, if you don't signal to the examiner clearly, the examiner will say that you are rambling, right? Because, oh, you're just telling stories and telling stories and telling stories. No, you tell one short story and then immediately you say, and so the point is that you say it explicitly. So it's very clear that you are not rambling. So don't tell a very long story. Nobody is interested in your grandmother's story.
So essentially, instead of P.E.E.R.S, some of you don't know the point yet, but you're doing the E, and P, which is okay. As long as the P, the point comes out, it is fine, because some people take a longer time to derive at it, so long as you address the question. Okay, and definitely with practice, because all these are actually essay questions. A lot of all these coincide with discursive questions and recount questions. And you already know how to organize them, right? You need an opening, you need body paragraphs, you need to conclude. Regardless, it cannot be you go blank totally. You know you have to explain and get into details. So if you find that you're using words like stuff, do things, then it is for you to think. If you keep using these words, surely the examiner will ask, Stephen, can you be clearer? Like you said, there are occasions. Could you describe one of them? So the examiners will end up asking you for the specifics. So why don't you just get down to doing it yourself to avoid falling into a lower band?
Okay. So this is the first technique. Feel free to choose a different path. It's not that P.E.E.R.S is right or P.E.E.R.S is wrong, or this is right or this is wrong. I'm giving you techniques, and then you choose, and then you make use of the choices. So if you find that you are stuck, you describe the example first. This is what you do in your personal recount. You describe the example first, and then you reflect and say, this is what I believe. Do you understand? It is not a new technique. You already know this from the personal recounts which you have written many of, right? And so now you apply it here in your oral. Okay? Example first, and then you make your point. So answer the question. So the most important thing is that you must make it very explicit be explicit, okay? So from that experience, I'd say, which is why I feel strongly that that's what makes me think that, and I think, okay, so this is the phrase which you need to memorize. This is a phrase which you memorize, and then you don't need to memorize all of them. Two, one, one or two, okay? Memorize this and then use it. So from that experience, I'd say that group activities are more motivating than exercising alone. Okay. So the comprehension style answer goes, yes, I think young people in Singapore are interested in the arts. Furthermore, schools often bring students to museums. And then, so instead, you start off by saying, last year my school organized a trip to the National Gallery. That experience showed me that young people are interested in the arts. They just need the right moment of connection. Okay, so you use the anecdote, tell the experience first, and then you come up with the point. That experience showed me that. Okay, so from the experience, I'd say, so you say it very clearly. So anecdote must be short. Some students think, oh, I must elaborate more. Then how do you elaborate more? Use an anecdote. So I just tell a very long story to fill up the time and you think that you're going to get high marks. It doesn't work that way. It's not about telling your long grandmother's story in order to get marks. Don't do that. What you're doing is you're telling that story in order to buy time for yourself to think and to arrive at the judgment. So that point which you arrive at is the value. That is your answer to the question. And that is why I believe this or that. Okay. So now, time for you to try this technique out, okay? Do you think it is important for families to spend time together? You have never thought about this before, you didn't prepare for this, and on the spot, you need to do something. Okay, so if anybody wants to try this technique on the spot, put up your hand. Otherwise, type it out in the chat. Put up your hand, I'll let you speak. Don't put up your hand, just type into the chat, okay? And you don't have time to think because this is spoken interaction. So you need to start typing now, immediately, or start answering immediately. No time to think, no time to plan. Spontaneous. Okay, hit the answer button or hit the return button or hit the enter button now. You don't need to give me the full answer. I know some of you are very hard, you're typing away and everything, but just want to put that technique into use. That's all. And then after you can practice on your own, but just do it once. My family tries to seize every chance we get to bond together by playing games. And we have played Monopoly. Okay, after that, you need to have the point. Okay. During the pre-COVID times, my family and I would frequently head out to the East Coast Park. I believe that this has shaped my memories of my childhood. With that, I believe it's important for families to spend time together. The first reason. Okay, yeah, that's right. My family and I have always ensured that we have one day off during the weekends. Thus, I believe it is important. Yeah. During my final exam period, I spent every evening locked in my room studying. And that's why I believe spending time together is essential for our mental health. Yeah, that's right. While I personally try my best to spend time with my family, we will do many different activities together, badminton. After all, blood is thicker than water. I believe that is absolutely important for families. Very good.
Very good. Very good.
My
Yeah, so
family,
they're getting it.
yeah,
They're getting
yeah,
it. So
yeah,
you realize, you need to always, the themes are always community, family, health, this and that. So you need some, a little bit of an idiom here and there, like blood is thicker than water. There's nothing like fun time together. Things, what things are not your cup of tea. All these you can quickly fit in. So avoid starting with yes, no, I. So Stephen, I put in the chat a very quick trick. Start with a gerund. Okay. Do you think it's important for families to spend time together? So spending time together as a family is certainly important. Okay. It gives you time to think actually, and you will sound better than someone who says yes, no, I feel or I believe. Some of them are
all, yeah,
rambling. So when you type, you must be also very conscious. You want to add words like, for instance, another time or another kind of board game we play is bingo. Somebody wrote about Monopoly, this and that. So don't start rambling from that onwards. Okay, make
yeah.
sure you vary your sentence structure as much as you can. Okay, as well as you can.
Yeah. So Sanjay, your answer where you say this is a memory of my childhood, blood is thicker than water. The point is not brought across clearly. You need to have a phrase like this. Otherwise, it seems as if like you're rambling. That's what Mrs. Trump said. You understand, Sanjay?
So you need to draw back and say, because blood is thicker than water, spending time together is imperative. Okay,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
So you have to literally echo the question at some point in time. This is the same skill you learned when you write essays. Regardless of how you arrange your P.E.E. or L or whatever, the point must be linked to the question.
Okay. JS, I see you starting with this family time full stop technique. It's wrong. Don't do that. Don't do that. I've seen many students start writing their essays with just two words like resilience full stop and then they begin. Don't do that. Okay, it's wrong. You
Yes, you're not
what you
doing a
should
debate.
yeah, you should be going family time is one of the most important. There is no such, it's not a proper sentence. You understand? You don't go family time full stop. Okay. Okay. So I've taken a look at every single one of whatever you have typed in, and so almost everybody has gotten it right. So you start off with your example first, and then after that you have to signal your point very clearly. It's very important to avoid being penalized for rambling. Okay, so don't spend too much time telling the story. The telling the story is just for the purpose of giving yourself time to think and to process and then telling the examiner what you believe. It's just like writing your personal recount. Your writing a personal recount is not about writing a PSLE compo style story and then at the end, and then you have one line. No, it's actually the other way around. You tell a short story and then you spend time reflecting about what you learned, how you overcame the challenge. Okay, so first technique done. Let's look at the second technique. Okay, so the second technique, many of you said just now at the beginning, you said, like. So what you do, observe what I'm doing now. is to just spend some time to think. It is very normal for human beings to need time to think because you need to select the appropriate words and then you need to arrange them so that whatever comes out of your mouth is grammatical. So if I use the same amount of time, if I just keep quiet during those times when I need to think, it will be the same. It's still the same amount of time. It's just that I keep quiet instead of going. Do you understand? So it's not that you cannot say uh and that you cannot say like. Your understanding must be that it is normal. Everybody needs time to think. It is normal to say or like. And so you just choose to use the power pause and say nothing instead because the word itself is not important. What you're doing with the word, whether it's or like, is to buy yourself that 1 second of reflection. Do you see what I just did there? To buy yourself that 1 second of reflection. Because what's the word I'm looking for? It's to buy myself that 1 second of reflection. Is to buy myself that 1 second of reflection. So just keep quiet. Just keep quiet and use your PP. Okay, this is the PP, the power pause. Your
The
brain
other
needs
trick,
time to think. Yes.
yes, the other trick is to put a full stop. A lot of them tend to drag the sentence. Actually, they finish and then they go and then they force fit something in there and then which then by then and so okay then you end up with a very ungrammatical an ungrammatical sentence. So what you need to do is pause, stop the full stop. What you actually mean to say is now I've got another thing to explain, so then explain it properly. By I type the list there, you can say what I just meant was that blah blah blah. When I spend time with my family playing Scrabble, for example, we actually not just have fun guessing what each player is going to put. Sometimes my sister would end up sabotaging me by blocking out the triple word how, full stop. Okay, even though scoring is not the imperative here, we still have fun playing and laughing because it takes the stress out of me, particularly before an exam. So it's not like it's so many pauses, but you avoid using the filler words exactly. And also it gives you time to think about the next best thing you can say in a more fluent manner.
That's right. And Mrs. Strom just pointed out the overuse of the and. So don't do that. Don't do that. Just finish off the sentence. Remember that you can speak in short sentences and that all these short sentences actually add up. It becomes a paragraph if I write it down. So that's the normal human way to communicate. You don't need to answer in a single sentence. You don't need to do that. It's so erase this wrong programming where your teacher said you must answer in a complete sentence. It's actually answer in complete sentences, not in a complete sentence. Do you understand? So you don't need to answer as if it must be in one sentence only. You can answer in many sentences. Okay. Okay, so remember to use the power pause because this is how we select our words. This is how we choose. This is how we arrange the words so that they come out grammatical. You understand? So the speaking time is almost the same. So instead of saying just replace it with, and then you have enough time to think of what to say. So the fillers are very distracting. It comes because when I think about what to say next, as a listener, you need to delete. It's so awkward. It's such a waste of brain effort, waste of energy on your part, right? So if I were to just keep quiet, it's easier for you to assimilate and to understand. And that's what good speakers do. They keep quiet. So don't think that you have to come up with the perfect sentence. What you do is that you just pick one clause at a time, one section at a time. I think the exercise is important because it helps people stay healthy and it also builds discipline, especially for young people who might not have the motivation to exercise on their own. So notice how I inserted micro pauses in between because I needed time to think. So that's what you would do. What you don't want to do is to say, I think the exercise is important because it helps people stay healthy and it also builds discipline, especially for young people who might not have the motivation to exercise. Don't do that. Don't do that. The students who rush and who say everything in one, no, the examiners can't hear what you're saying. You understand? If you speak too quickly and if you just have some prepared answer in your mind and you're just reading out quickly, the examiner doesn't give marks for long sentences. The examiner gives you marks because whatever you say is coherent, is intelligible, it makes sense. So it must be delivered at a speed at which human beings can accept and can engage and can understand. So don't be in a rush to speak. You don't need to talk a lot, but you must talk enough. Do you understand? Your aim for the spoken interaction is not to create a tsunami of words. It's not to overwhelm the listener with words. It's not to beat them on the head with all the words that you use and to demonstrate that you have many words. No. The whole point about spoken interaction is to show that you can communicate in English. Because one of these days you'll be working and you'll be communicating in English with people from France. You'll be communicating in English with people from Taiwan. You'll be communicating in English with people from Saudi Arabia. Because we are Singapore, we are a trading nation, and we are multicultural. And that's what you need to have the ability to do. You need to be able to carry out meaningful conversations in a real way. The exam is a way of measuring your stage of skill development. So it's important for you to learn these techniques. Do you understand? Okay, so for those of you who have problems with the or the does anybody want to try it out live? Now, just put up your hand. Anybody? Anybody? So many of you, 100, more than 100 of you online. So, anybody? Okay, Brenda, where are you? Brenda, you put up your hand and then you disappeared. Brenda, where are you? Okay, Brenda. Hello, Brenda.
Hi.
Okay, are you ready to answer something on the spot?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question which you have not prepared for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here we go. Brenda, if I were to
Um,
give you,
my name is yeah, give me a second. Yeah, my name is Sasha. Yeah, that's my mom's name.
okay,
Yeah,
Sasha,
yeah.
if I were to give you a ticket to watch the BTS reunion concert, would you watch and why?
No, I would not like to watch this concert as I'm not interested in things like K-pop. Um, as I'm more interested in other music groups such as pop music and mm, and piano background music. So probably I would not like to visit it, but my best friend and my sister would enjoy this as they enjoy watching BTS.
Okay, very good. I can see that you had a number of pauses. Just because one or two came out, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. It's perfectly fine. I can see that you substituted a lot of the with pauses so that you could think, right? I thought that that was
Yeah.
very well
Sasha,
done. Okay, yeah.
Sasha, can you
Yes.
re-look at how you started? What was the thing we asked you to avoid? Would you be
Oh,
keen to catch the BTS concert? And you immediately went to, no,
say
I
no.
wouldn't. So
Oh,
start with the Gerard.
it's
Okay, going for the BTS reunion concert is the last thing I would ever want to do for several reasons. Sometimes you just need to do that.
okay.
Okay, or I mean, think of something intuitive. It's not just whether you like K-pop, because you contradicted yourself by saying you actually like pop music and piano background music. Give examples of that. Do you mean Richard Clayderman? Things like by Yiruma, like a Korean pianist who plays very, very nice pieces on the piano. And if you say pop song, by whom? By Western artists, American artists, or what? So these are the opportunities for you to go into the E, E, and L, rather than hover on, okay, I'm panicking now because I just said no, but I don't know what to do with it. But very good. You thought of making it up by saying, that's it. You could have used the transition word, that's it. Even if I'm not keen on this, my sister and some of my friends who are fanatics of BTS will definitely try to lay their hands on tickets for their reunion show in South Korea, which happened, is it on the 21st of March, right? At Gangwon.
Okay.
Thank
Yes.
you, Brenda. It
Yeah.
was very brave of you
Thank-
and well done.
Sasha.
I like to see it when Sasha. I like to see students immediately apply the technique. It doesn't have to be a 100% mastery, but I can see that once they apply the technique, they improve. So that's amazing. That's very good feedback for us as teachers. You know, that's the main reason why we are teachers. We want to help students to improve, and we know that these techniques work. So you just need to use this and practice. Now, some of you will say that, okay, maybe I can try. So do it by recording yourself. Okay, so just use your handphone, create a video recording of yourself or an audio recording of yourself. You do not need to send it to anybody. You do not need to send it to anybody. It's just between you and your handphone. So just record yourself speaking and replacing the us and the and the like with the PP, the power pause. Okay? Practice. Okay? You need to practice this. If you practice this, your fluency score goes up for sure. Let's move on to the next technique. Technique 3. Okay, so we need to have time to think. Because when you don't have time to think, you feel very pressurized. The examiner asks you a question which you have it, something that which you didn't anticipate, and some of you said just now, I said, oh, but I can't anticipate the next question. That's normal. In real life, you don't know what your boss is going to ask you. In real life, when you go for a job interview, although there are a number of standard questions such as why do you want to work with our company? They say, oh, it's because blah 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 blah. Or they ask you questions like uh, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then, oh, standard answer, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they throw you questions which you have never prepared for. You understand? Or whether it's for a job interview, whether it's for uh, university application, whether so there's so many instances where people actually ask you questions and you need to have some time to think. And what you need is a runway. A runway. What's a runway? A runway, when you have your aeroplane. So your aeroplane on the ground, it's on wheels, right? So it needs runway. It needs to pick up some speed before it can fly off. It doesn't just immediately, yes, and this is the answer, rocket. Yeah, no, you need some time. And so the beats here meaning 1, 2, 3. We learned this in music, isn't it? 1, 2, 3. So beats, that's an important point to consider. So you have saved or you have bought time or you've created time for yourself to think. 3 beats to think. Something like 2 seconds, nearly 1.5 to 2 seconds to think. There are a few ways to look at this. This is this is the technique which I used just now. This is something I feel quite strongly about. It's not actually, it's just that this is a way to buy time to think. Do you understand? So these phrases are the things which you memorize. You memorize this if you agree. What if you are signaling that you don't agree? It really depends on how we define the issue of exercise. I think many people would say that attending concerts, while fun, can be quite frivolous. There are a few ways to look at this. So memorize this because it buys you 3 beats or 2 seconds. On the other hand, now you know why there is something called on the other hand. Because many students say this is the equivalent of but. So why can't I just say but? Of course you can say but. But is only half a second. But is only half a second. On the other hand, it is 1.5 seconds. Because I'm not just saying on the other hand, da, 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 da. No, I'm going on the other hand, I think that so on the other hand, so I can drag it out because it's fine. We also need to consider the fact that so this is the technique, this is the secret. You have runway phrases like this and they are memorized, meaning that you don't need to put any effort into it once you deliver them because on the next word is obviously other and the next word is obviously hand. So you just fire it off and then your brain is free to think and plan about what you really want to talk about. Do you understand? So the reason why we have short phrases and long phrases is because the long phrases are for you to buy time for yourself to think. Okay? I can think of a situation. So I have many students who go, for example, for example, for example, and then you have wasted the opportunity. Because, for example, you're very quick to fire off the example, but that's 1 second. What if you say, a good example of this would be a situation where now I bought 3 seconds for myself to think about what that example might be and how it answers and how it is relevant to the question. So these are the things which you need to memorize and which you need to learn, because this is how people speak in real life. In real life, nobody comes up with the answer x equals 42 like that on the spot. We actually need time to think. Do you understand? We don't take this seriously enough. This is a very serious issue. Not many people realize this, but the question really boils down to this. If we think about this from the senior citizen's point of view, we would realize that they really appreciate all the efforts that the government has put in to build ramps, to have buses where there are mobile ramps that can be deployed and where there's a special space for PMDs to go on board. If we think about this from the young child's point of view, if we think about this from the government's point of view, if we think about this from the school's point of view, okay, if we think about this from the parents' point of view, so we can, so these runway phrases. And now the question is, do you think students spend too much time on their phones? Okay, type in your answer on the spot. But you need to look through the runway phrases, right? Does anybody want to attempt this live? Put up your hand and you can practice on the spot. I'll show this. I'll show this on the spot. And then you can just choose and read off. Brinda, you have answered just now. I'll give a chance to somebody else. Okay. Anybody? Somebody? Pancake. Okay. Pancake. Pancake, is that your mother's name? What's your real name, Pancake? Okay, where's Pancake? Let me search. LMNOP. Okay, Pancake, hello. Hello, Pancake. Can you say something?
They're quite shy today.
Yeah, Pancake is going to say, no, it was my sister who pressed the button, which is fine. Anybody else? That's one of the things that I noticed about secondary school students. Secondary school students are a bit more reserved than primary school students, right? All the primary school students are
Yes.
fighting over themselves to
Yes.
speak.
Lots of
Yeah.
hands coming up.
Karthik, where are you? I saw Karthik's hand appear and then it disappeared again. Karthik, can you unmute yourself? Have I found Karthik? Where's Karthik's name?
This question is not difficult at all because we
Oh,
have
Karthik's
done similar
mic is
things.
not working.
Okay, how about I just try very quickly so that we can get it going.
Okay.
Okay, you ask the question.
Okay, so my question is, I'm not going to ask, do you think students spend too much time? I'll change this, okay, so that you have to answer
Panic.
on the spot. Yeah, that's right. The panic is normal. Even
Yes.
adults, even examiners
Oh,
panic.
no.
And that's why we use the techniques to buy time for ourselves to think. Okay, so the question is,
all of you must remember, we are playing taboo here, right? No starting with yes, no, I feel. That's the main thing we want to practice today, cutting down filler words, using transition words, and making things very clear. Okay, Ken.
do you think that senior citizens would benefit from the use of AI?
Whether senior citizens would benefit from using AI rests upon how familiar they are with AI applications and also whether they are good at using smart gadgets. The thing is, for AI to be useful, one needs to run it either on a smartphone or to use a laptop or computer to access apps like ChatGPT, Cloud, or Google Gemini. Take my mother, for example. she is not very literate in using phones for a start. So the last thing that would help her is for me to suggest, for example, how to come up with a better recipe for homemade noodles using ChatGPT. She will definitely be very resistant to that because she struggles with even WhatsApping her friends accurately. So, in my opinion, AI would not help elderly people like my mother. Okay, and then blah, blah, blah.
Thank you. Very good. So, in my opinion, you see, so that's the runway phrase. In
Yes.
my opinion, which is why you don't use it in your essay. You don't use the phrase in my opinion in your essay because your entire essay is your opinion. So these phrases are the things which are very conversational. You don't use these phrases in essay writing. You use them for conversations. Okay? Did I see Caden's hand just now? Caden, was it you putting up your hand? Would you like to answer? Caden Ng? There are a few Caden, there are actually 4 Cadens here, but Caden Ng, would you like to answer? Yes, no, I give you 3 seconds. 1, yes. Caden, are you there? Say something. I can't hear you. Say test, 1, 2, 3. Oh, I can't hear you, Caden. Okay, maybe when you get your mic working, okay? Yeah. Okay, so we move on to the next section. The next technique 4, zoom out. So zoom out. So you don't want to get stuck at a personal level. When you zoom out, you're actually going beyond the prompt. So zooming out is going beyond the prompt. This is the one which enables you to escape from the confines of that question. So tell me about a sport you enjoy. Do you think competitive sports are beneficial? Has society play? So you want to zoom out. So you say, and I think my experience isn't unusual. So you have described your experience and now you want to say, my experience isn't unusual. Many people say this. Many elderly Singaporeans. Also, you have escaped. You have moved beyond the prompt. So it's very simple to move beyond the prompt once you use these techniques. Just now, one of you asked how to move beyond the prompts. Like this. These are all the ways to move beyond the prompts. So this isn't just about me and my personal experience. On a larger scale, collaborative learning has been proven to help students to develop an interest in the subject and to have greater mastery of whatever it is that they are investigating. This isn't just about me. And because before that, you're telling your story, right? Tell your story, tell your story. Don't just get stuck there. Zoom out. I think this reflects a bigger pattern, which is that if that's true for me, it's probably true for many others as well. I'm not saying it is definitely true. I'm saying it's probably true for many others as well. What this tells us on a wider level is that beyond just my own experience, I think this shows that. So these are the zoom out phrases which will help you to move beyond the prompt. Okay. What factors contribute to urban flooding in Singapore? Does anybody want to try live? If not, type it into the webinar chat. Okay, I give you 2 minutes. Typing into the webinar chat for spoken interaction, not so realistic. I liked Brenda just now when she struggled and successfully did it on the spot live. And when Mrs. Shum demonstrated how to do it live. And there's always a struggle. And for me, I also struggle because the question we always face is, but what if I can't answer, right? And what if I make a boo-boo, correct? And the answer is, then you just pick yourself up and move on. So if you make a mistake or you say something wrong during the oral exam, you don't go, oh, that's it. And then I keep quiet for the rest of the session. Oh, you just carry on because you are a human being. Human beings make mistakes. And so the important thing is to overcome and to continue. Yes, Charlotte. Okay, let's see. Charlotte. Charlotte Lee. Charlotte, would you like to say something? I'm asking Charlotte to unmute. As usual. No, that was an accident. Okay, don't panic. Would you like to say something? Don't worry. Okay, Afsin. Okay, let me try Afsin, okay? Afsin, would you like to say something?
This one our Sec 4s would be able
Yeah.
to do because recently we
Okay.
had an editing piece on flash floods as well. That is where actually you can use things that you have read or watched on YouTube to support your views.
Okay, so Afsin, using one of this or a few of this or using one of this, I suppose, or two of this. Okay, can you answer the question which I'll ask you now? What factors contribute to urban flooding in Singapore?
Wait, urban flooding in Singapore is driven by rainfall, of course, high frequency rainfall. Flooding is obviously created by rainfall, rising sea levels, and geographical vulnerabilities. In my experience so far, I wouldn't say urban flooding has been occurring to a great extent in Singapore, since Singapore has a well planned out drainage system. And while other countries can't say the same, due to their bigger size and their higher geographical vulnerabilities, I think my experience is unusual. Many people in Singapore can also say the same, that they haven't experienced much urban flooding as
Okay,
what.
okay, let me pause for a while. So far, your answer makes sense. You're talking about what's happening in Singapore, right?
Yeah.
So what you would do is you would adapt this. Let me show it. So this thing here, then you would say, this isn't just about Singapore, though. On a larger scale, countries which are not urban centers like Singapore, for example, Indonesia or in Thailand, experience flooding because of deforestation.
Okay.
And the water runs down and then it floods the urban centers. So, although flooding in urban areas like Singapore can be due to the amount that falls within a very short time period, elsewhere, there are other factors to be considered. So that's how you use this zoom out phrase to escape from the confines of the question, because the question is urban flooding in Singapore. So just for that little short while, you want to zoom out and say, this isn't just about Singapore, though on a larger scale, we are experiencing climate change. And countries which have problems with deforestation experience urban flooding. Because they might think that the people living in the countryside don't have much power, or they don't have much uh, control, since large tracts of land might be uh, owned by companies. And so when the companies carry out large scale logging, the water just rushes down the river and then the city gets flooded. So just escape for a short while. Do you understand? So the zoom out phrase is for
Mhm.
you to escape.
Okay.
Okay?
So I
Thank
can
you. Yeah.
provide other examples of
But
other.
not too much. It's just a little bit, because remember the zoom out phrase is for you to go beyond the prompt. So the prompt is this: urban flooding in Singapore. So that first part which you did was very important because you answered to the question. That's very good. That will already get you your band 4. So now you're thinking about how to get the band 5. Right? You said that in order to get band 5, you need to move beyond the prompt. You see?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Afsin.
Thank you.
Okay, was there somebody else? Is there anybody else who would like to try and then we can give you instant feedback? Okay, so Dylan says, won't zooming out cause you say things that are possibly off topic and not answering the question? So you must be wise. Be wise because you need to answer the question first. If you don't answer the question and you're just talking about other things and you spend too much time talking about other things, then of course you didn't answer the question. If you don't answer the question, it means that you didn't answer the question. If you
Actually,
answer the
Dylan,
question and
yeah.
then sometimes you move beyond the prompt, then you get your band 5. So this is not something for weak students to attempt. This is for the students who have already hit their band 4 and they've hit the ceiling. Do you understand? So you need to answer the question first, get your 12 marks, and then you say, okay, I've already answered the question. Now I need to zoom out in order to break through and get my band 5. So I'm just going to say a little bit, and that enables me to get my band 5. Yes,
To
Mrs.
add
Shum.
also, to add also, when we say zoom out, it is not going off topic. The topic is still flooding. It's a matter of flooding where and the cause of it. So in an urban place, we don't have natural surfaces to absorb the rain. So everything rolls off the roads, the canals get overwhelmed, and the water level rises. Okay, geographically, you learned that. But in other countries, I think Pancake did put in countries in Africa, there's a lack of funding to construct drainage system. So it happens because there is no proper canals and drains to take away all the excess water that comes down fast and furious. So that's not zooming out as in talking about snowfall or something like that. It's
Not
still on
zooming
the topic
away.
of flood. Yeah, we didn't say zooming away. We said zoom out. So it's like the screen, right? You zoom in, you see this page. You zoom out, you go a little away, but you look at other details and other examples. So be very careful of your interpretation of what teacher Stephen just taught. Not zoom away, but zoom out.
Zoom out is not zoom away. This is zoom in. This is zoom out. This is zoom
Yes. So when
away.
you zoom in, you only fixate on, say, Singapore. When you zoom out, you look at the world in general and examples from other places.
Okay. That's a good point, but it's a good question. So it gives
Yes, a
us
good
an
question.
opportunity to explain to everybody. So I thank you for asking that question, Dylan.
That's why you see phrasal verbs are very, very important for revision
Yeah.
as well.
Okay, technique 5. So towards the end, you know, your P.E.E.R.S. and it says, okay, summarize. And you're supposed to say, and that's why I believe that blah blah blah. The problem if I'm giving a well-developed answer is that towards the end, I might have forgotten what the original question was because I'm caught up inside my head. Okay, I need to think of this and then I need to think of that. And then I'm coming up with examples and then I've zoom out phrases and building the bridge. And then there's a runway and I have all of these things inside my head. And then towards the end, I go, and don't do that. So the part is because you feel as if you're being forced to come up with a summary and you can't remember the question and you can't summarize and then now you feel panicky. But you don't need to because you can just wrap it up. Wrap it up with phrases that are generic. You don't need the question. You can just say, and that's what I believe. And so that's where I stand on this. That's why I feel this way. All things considered, that's my view. So ultimately, that's my position. And I think that says something about how conversation needs to be something which is alive and spontaneous. That's the main reason I feel so strongly about this. Like that. So memorize, hard work, study. Memorize is to study and it involves hard work. Okay, so memorize these phrases. You don't need to memorize all of them. You need one or two. You know, if they ask you two questions, you just need two different endings. Does that make sense? So you need to just need to memorize to select two. And if you have these techniques and if you have these phrases, you are much better than 99% of all the other students out there. I guarantee you, none of them, 99% of them don't speak like this. Okay, because this is how adults speak. And so, so the band five, you're talking about, hey, the students who have really been involved in conversations at home over dinner. Whereas if you have been watching videos on your phone while eating and not having conversations with your parents over dinner, then you don't have that practice, you see. But if you have been having conversations with your parents about what happens in the office, about what's happening in the world, then you have lots of opportunities to acquire these phrases which adults use. Okay. Let us move on to this practice video. Okay. So let's say you have this video. Let's say if you have this video, a crowd at a health exhibition, there are many booths and people are being counseled at various health programs that they can sign up for. Okay, so we imagine that you have already planned and delivered your planned response. Okay, so now we are doing spoken interaction. Question one, do you think young people in Singapore take their health seriously enough? Okay, how would you answer on the spot? Does anybody want to answer on the spot? If not, type your answer. Do you think young people in Singapore take their health seriously enough? Okay, so Chuan An typed in a very short answer, which is the comprehension style answer. Yes, no. Young people don't take their health seriously enough. So it needs to be more than that, right? So make use of the techniques. Do you know the techniques? The techniques which we shared with you today, they are all here on the last page. All the techniques are here on the last page. So remember, there are two things that you can do. The first one is that if I have prepared and if I know the answer to this, I can do P.E.E.R.S, no problem. Okay, do that. If I have to think of an answer on the spot, maybe I need to give the example first. And maybe I need to use my PP and power pause instead of using ums to buy myself time to think. Perhaps I might use a runway phrase to buy myself 2 or 3 bits from my own experience instead of, for example, I might need to have a zoom out bridge after I've I've described everything which answers the question. Now I'm trying to break through into band 5. I zoom out and say just a little bit about a related idea. Zoom out, not zoom away. And then towards the end, if I can't remember how to summarize, maybe I can use a wrap-up statement. All things considered, that's my view. Okay, does anybody want to try? I thought I saw somebody's hand going up just now for a very short while. Okay, you can provide your answers now. You can just hit the enter key and we will review your answers, see how well you have assimilated the lessons of tonight. Okay, Leonard, your answer is good, but I want you to use the runway phrases and a zoom out bridge. Can you try incorporating one runway phrase and one zoom out bridge? Because your question, you ended off by saying, and I believe that young people nowadays do not take care of their health or seriously. Okay, so that answers the question. That is exactly band 4. But you want to get into band 5. So you need to zoom out. Let me demonstrate how to zoom out. Okay, so okay, let me copy this first. Let me show you. Okay, so this was the answer given by one of our participants. I think it's a very good answer because it answers the question. But at the same time, we are talking about how we can use runway phrases to buy ourselves time to think and how to zoom out so that it moves beyond the prompt. So the question was, what was the question? Do you think young people in Singapore take their health seriously enough? Okay, so how would I begin it? I would say from my own experience. So I start off with my runway phrase, to buy myself time to think. From my own experience, I have many friends who eat fast food on a regular basis, with McDonald's being a popular option for lunch and dinner. I think this reflects a bigger pattern. Very nice. That's right. Which is that with fast food being more accessible nowadays, many teenagers neglect their health by not eating healthily. And at this point in time, you actually want to insert examples. You want to talk about frappuccinos and the sugar. You want to talk about
Bubble tea,
hamburgers. Yeah, you want to talk about hamburgers, not just having
donuts, and all
protein,
that. Yeah.
but their juiciness coming from the fat content. So the more fat there is in a hamburger, the juicier it is, because the juice is actually the fat and the oil. So by illustrating this, by pinpointing this, it actually makes that picture come alive, right? So here you have jumped very quickly to the ending, because this is how you would answer a comprehension question. Now, you don't want to treat this as a comprehension question. So at this stage, right, after you've talked about neglecting their health by not eating healthily, then you could say, if we look at this from a larger point of view, Singapore is struggling with a diabetes epidemic. Okay. Then we can talk about the fight against sugar and things like that. And so it's very difficult for the government to try to convince people to change their eating habits when companies spend so much money to advertise that their food is full of sugar, and they use bright colors and smiling models and influencers in order to brainwash people. So all things considered, all things considered, I think that teenagers are at risk of developing unhealthy eating habits, because the companies know that if they can build these habits into teenagers when they are young, then they have caught them for life, and the companies will profit. Okay, so that's how you escape from the prompt, talk about the larger issue just a little bit, and then answer the question. You don't want to do this kind of mechanical answering. It's not wrong. Answering mechanically like this, where you do your P.E.E.R.S. and then you say, and that is why I believe, it's not wrong. It's just that it's not a band 5. Do you understand? Because the band 5 is when the band 5 is when you're not just answering the question. So if in the end, all you do is to say, and that's why I blah, 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 answer the question, you are here at band 4. Because you, in your conclusion, and the last impression that you give to the examiner is that I answered the question. Okay, the examiner says, well done. You answered the question. Because that's what you did. You answered the question, but what you didn't do was that you didn't move beyond the prompt. Do you see? So sometimes what happens is that you get so used to answering in a particular way that you get stuck. So you need to free yourself. Free yourself, free your mind, and discover other ways of exploring the topic after you have built up that firm foundation. This one is very good. It covers all the necessary things. I thought that this was very good. 12 marks. is nothing to be sneered at. I think it's a highly respectable score. But if you want to get 13 to 15, then this is something which you need to work on. Do you understand? Because this definitely answers the question, but it's not good enough for band 5. It's good enough for band 4. But you could have expanded it a little bit more. Okay. Anybody else? If you put up your hands, no, nobody's gonna put up their hands. All shy. Don't be shy. Okay, so I have another and I have a few answers. Okay, so let's see. I have students who talk about vaping. Now, does that answer the question? Do you think that young people in Singapore take their health seriously enough? Yes, vaping is a serious issue and it answers the question. I have students who talk about crispy KFC fast food. Does it answer the question? Yes, it does. Foods full of artificial flavors packed with oil and sugar, such as bubble tea. Yeah, that answers the question. So you see, you bring in your general knowledge, and then after you have described that situation, then you take a step back and you make your judgment and your opinion, your evaluation. You say, this is what I believe. Because that's what they want to hear. They want to hear you talk about your experience, and then they want to hear you answering the question explicitly, and then they will give you the mark. Okay. Okay, so that's one. How about another question? Okay, so this question, let's say if it's this other video, you have a mobile phone obsession. So it's a very crowded lift, and then these two boys are taking turns to play games on their mobile phone, and they're handing the mobile phone over to each other over the heads of all the other students. So do you think teenagers today are too dependent on their mobile phones? Don't start with yes, I agree, etc. Okay, so we've given you a number of techniques. Okay, so we've given you a number of techniques and you try out on your own. Okay, so you try on your own, you can write it out, you can read it out on your own. This is a fully worked model to show you what the answer can look like, the techniques that are used. Okay, so back to zooming out. So zooming out, looking at the questions, the kind of questions that are asked. So typically they ask, how do you spend your free time? How do you think recreational spaces should be used? Do people have enough leisure time? So these are very common topics. So parks, leisure, recreation, sports, exercise, the kind of questions that they ask. So just now somebody asked, what kind of questions are going to come out? So these are the questions. These are the questions that will come out. Have you ever, how would you feel if, so on the personal level. And then after that, they might ask, what do you think about, do you agree? Is it important? They might not ask all three questions. Do you understand? So it just depends on what happens. Most of the time, it's just two questions. If the examiner is very helpful, they might insert a third or fourth question. Although strictly speaking, they are not supposed to do that. They are allowed to follow up on whatever it is that you say, but they are not supposed to substitute a different question for the question which has been given. Although I must say that I have encountered examiners who do that. Sometimes the examiners think that if they ask the question as it is phrased, the students have no hope of answering. So they simplify the question. Actually, it's wrong. I always
Yes.
scold my fellow examiners when they do that.
Or sometimes they, like I mentioned before, they cover, the candidate is so good, whatever they said covered all the prompts. Then with no choice, we have to have something relevant just to ask. It
Yeah,
has happened before as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
also
don't
happens.
panic. don't go out of the exam hall and say, oh, what exactly did your examiners ask? Oh no, I didn't get the same phrasing. Am I in trouble? So yeah, their colleagues, they rephrase it themselves, like tell
Yeah.
me about, sometimes they can ask, have you ever encountered, can you tell me about it? So it really depends on how confident the candidate is. Sometimes we do make it sound a little simpler if the person is obviously shivering and looking so timid. We
Yeah.
actually do help a little bit.
Yeah. But if the candidate looks very rude and arrogant and stuck up, then we just say, okay, then we just read the
Let's go on
question
to
as
the
it
next
is.
one.
So so your first impressions count, okay? So 5 spoken interaction techniques. Example first, power pause, runway, phrases, zoom out phrase, wrap up phrases, study, practice, use them. Okay. The phrases, they're all here. You need to sit down and study. This is the overview. This is the overview. And so we'd like to thank you for having given us the chance to share the techniques with you. And do attend more of our master classes and webinars. And we look forward to seeing you in future. Okay. Bye-bye. Mrs. Shum, last words of advice.
Don't panic. Don't see this as something very different from what you already know. Okay, you know you need good body paragraphs. I mean, in writing, you call it body paragraphs. Now you call it the meat, whatever you call it. You need to explain and to be as precise as possible. Because when you're precise, like French fries versus unhealthy food, it becomes stronger vocabulary and relevant vocabulary.
Okay. That's it. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye. See you soon.